Hey friends, I'm Anna Helman. Thanks so much for being here today. I have a question for you. What kind of a relationship do you have with fun fold cards? Do you love them? Hate them? You're afraid of them? You kind of want to try some, but you're not sure you can handle that yet? We're going to do fun fold cards today, but we're doing it in probably a totally different way from what you've seen before. I'm going to share with you how to design your own simple fun folds for any project, any dimensions that you want. I'm excited about this. I like to teach you things that you can take and use in lots of different ways. As you notice, I don't share fun fold card projects with the exact dimensions a lot, but I think this will be a great way for you to learn how to design your own simple fun folds anytime, different dimensions, any project you want. Let's get started. For these cards, I'm using regular card bases, and I just thought I'd show you real quick how I prepare mine. So these are going to be long, skinny card bases. I'll show you my normal ones here in a second, but I take a piece of cardstock, score in half at 5.5, flip this to 4.25, and use my cutting blade. This gives me 2 card bases. Now, my other size card bases are, I score this way first at 4.25, and then cut in half here at 5.5. I get a lot of questions about my trimmer. If you want to know about those lines I put on there to make it easier to cut my card bases and my card mats, I'll put a link in the video description below for that. So let's take a look at this. I have 6 fun fold cards already created. I'm going to show you the finished result, and I'm going to show you how to make that exact fold. So this is the first one, and technically, I don't know if this counts as a fun fold, but I think any card that has something a little bit different with like a different flap or something like this, I think these all count as fun folds. You can tell me if you feel differently. This is the only one that doesn't actually have a special fold. It just has a special flap. So how do we create the base for this type of a card? So this one opens the long way. I need the long skinny card base. And for this one, I lined up the edge over here at 3/4 of an inch. And I scored right there. I already had my score line in the center, and I need one more. Then I took that piece right there, that flap, I folded it back, and I attached it to the card. You could leave it unattached if you wanted. I'll show you another one here in a second that has that unattached, and here you can see how this one came out. So this one I scored at 3/4 of an inch, and here's where you can play around with these and make it any dimension you want. You can make it shorter, you can make it longer, but let's look at the second one. And this one I scored at 1 inch, and I left this flap unattached. As you can see, I scored at 1 inch and then folded that back, and what we get is a fun little card that can open like this, and I attached my greeting to it. It's kind of fun because it sticks up a little bit. I love when cards have extra dimension, even if it's just a fold that isn't totally folded back. I'll mention quickly the products I use to make these. I was so excited. I got this new product suite in the mail. I love product suites because it's a whole bunch of products that coordinate with each other. Of course, you can pick and choose your favorites and order one or more than one if you want, but this is the designer paper. You're going to see lots of this on these other cards. It's called Utterly Adorable. The stamps and the dies that go with them are called Utterly Amazing, super cute. I did use some stamps from this cute stamp set. This one came separate. And then we have the coordinating trim and these pretty pearls that go with it. So here you can see how I've used the trim and some of those. Can you see these pearls over here? I thought that would look really cool, this river stone effect. So these are my first 2. Just give it an extra score line, fold it back, and then you can play around with how you finish your cards. Let's look at the next idea. The next type of fold, what I've done is taken a regular card that opens the regular way and added a flap to it. I like this flap idea because you can put the flap anywhere. It can open it could be on the top and it can open this way. It could be on the side, open this way. It could be on the bottom. If your card is this way, same thing. It can open any way you want to. But these are so easy to create, and you can size them differently depending on what you want to put on it, what you want the focal point of your card to be. So let's look at how to create these. Basically, you're just going to take your regular card base, and you need a flap of some sort that you're going to attach, any size you want, and you need a score line down the side. I always score mine at 1/2 inch for these, which gives me enough width to put my adhesive on here. You can make this wider if you want to. There's no reason not to make it wider, but it needs to be at least 1/2 inch. And to create this card, what you'll do is, I usually fold mine closed. You could do it with it open if you want to. I usually pretend like this flap isn't here. Okay. I fold mine closed like this, and then I hook, after I have the adhesive on here, put your adhesive on here, I hook it over the side so that I make sure it's going to close correctly. And then holding the flap a little bit, I just press everything closed. If you do this with it open, and you get it over a little bit too far to the left, what you'll find is when you put this flap under here, it is going to bow up a little bit and not shut quite right. If you ever do that, just trim a little teeny bit off of this top flap and it will be fine. So you can do this with just a plain piece of cardstock that you have cut, or you can do this with some die cuts. Can you see this little flap, the rough edges on both the flap itself and this lighter piece right here? I created those with a set of dies called deckled rectangles. And I love this. Is such a versatile set that you can use so many times, but I actually use those for my flap instead of just a piece of cut cardstock. So here's one idea. That one's blank on the inside right now, just with some designer paper in there. And let's step this up a little bit. That's what I'm trying to do with each of these, is show you a simple one and then a stepped up one. So what we have here is a card base that opens from top to bottom, regular card base. But what I've added, instead of just a flat piece with the little scored part that I attached to the card, I actually made a double fold. How do you do this one? For this one, and again, you don't have to worry too much about measurements here. What you need for this one is a longer, narrower piece of cardstock. You need a 1/2 inch flap, at least at the end, that you're going to attach to the card. And then this part, I scored it in half, the area that was left, but you wouldn't have to. Like, this could be, it could be this long, and you could have a small flap here and the bigger flap behind, so it would end right here. I don't know if this is making any sense or not, but so to attach this one, you, again, just hook this part over with your adhesive on the back and press it down. When you open it up, it will be attached and you have your flap here. Now, I didn't mention this on the first card, but I will now. It's important that you add whatever pieces you're adding here with your flaps. Do that before you put the mat on the inside of your card, because you can see here, if I put the mat on first, put this on next, you would see this over top. When you add your flap first and your mat next, then it covers up and you don't see the edges of your little flap here on the inside. Okay, those are the third and fourth ideas. Let's look at my last technique, which again, I have two different types of examples for it. And here is how this one opens. A classic fun fold idea here. And for this one, you will need to add one more score line to your card, to your typical card base. So if you are using a card that is going to fold this way, what you'll need to do is add one more score line in the center of this flap. You can play around with this. It could be towards the edge a little bit farther and still work. It can't really be over this way farther from center because it won't fit in an envelope if you try that. But what I want to do, we'll flip this around. I want to score this in half. So this section measures 4 1/4. Half of that would be 2 1/8. If I score here, now what I do is just fold this back, and this gives us a fun place to start. So you could actually just make a card just like this if you want to. Decorate both sides. You could put your greeting over here somewhere where it's hidden until it's open, and your signature. But what we're going to do with this idea is add some more flaps to it. Real quick, I will mention, if you're making the long, narrow one, because you'll see one of those here in a second, you need to add that second score line in the center. So these measure 5 1/2. The center of that would be at 2 3/4. So we have this, we fold this back, and that is our base to start working with. I'll mention, if you want all of the measurements for all of these cards, or the measurements for one of these cards with all of the layers and everything, I'm going to have a link in the video description below to go to my website. I always have a link there where you can go and look at the project in more detail. You can see still photos, and today in particular, you can get all these measurements there. So take a look at that. So on this one, I created that flap as the base, and then what did I add to it? I used a die cut, but any piece of cardstock can be added here as the piece you're going to put some decoration on top of. So it can be any size, just cut. Could be a punch or a die cut. Again, I've used those deckled rectangles, which you've seen several times here now. And it just makes a fun little piece. You can put something of interest there on the front, adds a fun little fold, a fun little way for the card to open. Let's step it up. Now, I have taken one of the longer, narrower card bases here for this one, and I added a flap here, but wait, there's more. I actually made this one a flap as well. So how did I do this? This is just a longer, narrower piece of cardstock scored in the center. So I just attached this half, the left half of this piece right here, attached it to this flap right here. That is something when you make this type of a card, you have to be really careful only to put your adhesive on the left half of whatever you're attaching to the front. Ask me how I know. I have sealed cards shut before by putting adhesive on the whole thing just by habit. So I thought this was fun. Some of these, I don't know if you've noticed, some of these fun greetings are from that extra stamp set I grabbed called Saying Hey. I really like this big hey period stamp. And then this one came from the same ones. I'm so glad you exist, and I love you. But just some fun ideas for fun folds. I hope you have liked seeing all these products from that really cute, utterly adorable suite of links to all the products I used in the video description below. And like I said, a link to go get those measurements on my website for all of these cards. I hope this helps you be able to design your own fun fold cards on your future projects. So let's chat for a minute. This is what we do at the end of my videos. I hope you had a wonderful Thanksgiving last week. And I just want to share a little bit about Thanksgiving history. I've started this other YouTube channel. I would love for you to go check it out. It's called Life with Helman. Been sharing about kind of an assortment of things, but I shared one here a few days ago about the history of Thanksgiving. We're going to do a real quick summary right now, but we know Thanksgiving came from the celebration that the Native Americans and the Pilgrims had at the end of that first season. The Pilgrims had survived actually about a year at that point in the New World, and they were so thankful that the natives had helped them learn how to grow their own food. They'd gotten a harvest. They were taking time out to praise God for the blessing, for that blessing. But Thanksgiving hasn't been celebrated ever since then. Who declared the first Thanksgiving after that? It was George Washington in 1789. He made a proclamation setting aside the fourth Thursday in Thanksgiving in November, I believe, as Thanksgiving, with the intention of praising God for his goodness, for his mercy, for all the things that he had blessed this new nation with. Did that start Thanksgiving? It did not. It did not. It didn't catch on. They didn't do this every year. Leave it to President Abe Lincoln in 1863 during the Civil War to do basically the same thing that Washington had done that first time. He made a proclamation setting aside that day in November. Imagine what it would have been like during the Civil War. No one knows what's going to happen, if this nation is going to be ripped apart, if we can preserve the integrity of it. And we need something to be thankful, something positive. And what were they doing? They were giving extra attention to the Lord that they believed would lead them through that difficult time in the nation's history. So ever since 1863, then I believe that's when it actually started as a national holiday. But something that just kind of I became more aware of here recently was like, Thanksgiving is a religious holiday, but it's never seemed that way to me. In my lifetime, yes, we say prayers before our meal when I get together with our families, but we do that all the time. So it just wasn't something that I realized how spiritual of a holiday that is. I almost feel silly saying that, like, duh, you should have known this. And I did know it, but I just didn't know as much about the history. I talked a lot more about it, about some amazing things that the Pilgrims came through from the time they left England to they went to, I believe, Holland, went back to England, came over here. They had a ship they had to leave behind. They set sail and had to go back, and set sail and had to go back, and had to leave the ship behind. Then they're in the middle of the ocean, and I think it was the main beam of the ship cracked, and they were at risk of sinking in the middle of the ocean. There's no Coast Guard to go rescue them at the time, Anyway, kind of an amazing story. But if you want to learn more about that, go to my other channel, Life with Anna Helman. There's other stuff there too if you want to take a look at it. But I appreciate you being here. I hope you have a blessed day. I hope you'll be back again next time when I'll be here helping you to hand make with love.